everyone, I am Chris. This is Simply Classic and it's new pattern day. So just as I promised, we did a smaller version of the Leah and it is being released today. We have the skinny and we have the mini. So we have two different versions. One is taller than the other, as you can see. And I just want to go over a couple features of each one. So the mini really is about the same shape as the original Leah. It's just much smaller. And you can see from this that it is much, much smaller. But it has that same general shape, just a smaller profile than the original Leah. However, because it is smaller, we added a front slip pocket because we really wanted to make sure that you had enough space to put your phone and other things that you may need. It does have a snap tab on it. The mini version fits a standard Aquafina or Dasani bottle. So these are 16.9 fluid ounces and it fits in there perfectly, okay? On the inside, because this is a smaller area here, on the inside we put some credit card slots instead of a zipper pocket. So on one side you have credit card slots, and you'll probably be able to see this a little bit easier in the skinny once we get to it. I know this is dark. And then on the other side we have a slip pocket. So you should be able to carry this bag without carrying your wallet. And at least that was the idea, is to get you set up so you didn't have to carry your wallet. The bottom is exactly the same. You've got that panel here, contrast panel, and then you have your contrast side adjusters. It is a crossbody. There's no handles to it. So when you wear it, it is a wider bag. In order to accommodate more of the bottles that we see today, which is, well, make sure this doesn't fall, these kind of Icer or Yeti metal bottles, we also made the skinny. Now the skinny is just a taller version. We still have the front slip pocket with a magnetic snap. Of course, you have your divider inside just like normal for your water bottle. And then we have on one side a slip pocket, and then on the other side we have credit card pockets, and there's a total of 4 credit card pockets in there. And these credit card pockets are done differently. You don't use the lining for it, you actually use the main fabric for it. So it's really a very easy and simple process. Okay, so again, it is a crossbody, and when you wear this crossbody, it's slimmer. So it is, it fits on your body slimmer. It's not as wide, but of course it is taller. Okay, so we are going to be making the skinny today, in a different skinny today in this tutorial. But the pattern instructions are exactly the same, whether you choose the skinny or the mini. No difference. No difference in the measuring for the divider, absolutely nothing. The only difference is you have different pattern pieces. So all of the pattern pieces, all the curved pattern pieces come with the pattern. And then if you want the square and rectangle pieces, you can either cut them by the cutting chart measurements that are included in the pattern, or there's a coupon code on page 2 of the pattern. You can go ahead and download those square pieces for free, because when you go online, they're $5, but use your coupon code to get them for free if you bought the pattern. Okay, so let's get constructing. Let's go over all of our pattern pieces. Let's start out by talking about pieces. We have 2 main pieces for our front and our back. On these pieces, I went ahead and put some Decoville Light, and a little trick that I always use most time is at the very top, I always draw a line across, the top, and then put the Decoville right up against that line. And that way I know when I fold this over, because this is a drop-in lining since we have that divider, I'm going to be able to use that Decoville as a guide to fold it, and I'll know it's exactly a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So that's just a little tip. It's not in the pattern, but you might want to do that. We also have an exterior pocket. Now, on this pocket piece, you will see that the Decoville doesn't go all the way to the top. And I actually got a little overzealous and drew a line 1/2 inch and then thought, oh, no, that's not where it goes. It goes 1.5 inches down from the top, and it'll be a 1/2 inch from the bottom. Now, your pattern piece has that. So if you look at the pattern piece, there's a dotted line, and you'll be folding that piece there. And then that's, and of course on these dotted lines here. So you can probably actually print the pattern twice and then cut out on the dotted line, and then that will be your Decoville. So that's the pocket, the exterior pocket. We have our gusset. This is our bottom gusset piece. There's just one of these. There's Decoville heavy, and it's outside the seam allowances. We have our side gusset pieces. We have 2 of these. And once again, I went ahead and drew a line at the very top, put my Decoville light right up against that line, and fused it. We have our side strap connectors. This is in the contrast, nothing on the back. We have our crossbody strap. I'm doing mine again in the contrast. This is the mushroom color. We have our piping pieces are for our, to cover our cording. We have our zipper placket pieces. In the zipper placket, you're going to have 2 lining and 2 main pieces. Now, because this is a bag that holds a water bottle, I do suggest you use waterproof canvas for this. So I am using a kind of rose gold color, waterproof canvas. You have 2 upper lining pieces. I did the same thing, drew my line all the way across, put the Decoville up against it, that's Decoville light, and you have 2 of these upper linings for the front and back, and then you have 2 upper linings for the sides. Again, drew the line, put the Decoville right up against it. And now I know that both the lining and the main part of the bag, when I fold this over, I'm gonna have a nice crisp edge to fold it over, and I'll notice exactly a 1/2 inch. From there, we have our 2 lining pieces. Now, if you've made the Leah, you know that one of the lining pieces is regular size and the other lining piece is supersized. So you're going to have 1 of each of those. You're going to have 1 slip pocket lining. You have 1 gusset lining piece. You have your slip pocket, which again is in lining. You have a slip pocket accent, which is out of your main. You have a key fob, which is out of your main. Again, nothing on the back of those. And then you have 2 credit card pieces. One of them looks like this. You actually have a pattern piece for it. The other one is just a rectangle, so I give you measurements for that. Not only do you have the actual main pieces, but you also have lining pieces for each. Now, on the pattern piece, you will see that there is a line at the very top of the pattern piece that tells you where to cut your lining. And that is here. Okay, so you're going to fold that over to cut your lining and then cut the lining out in that shape. And then I give you a measurement for the lining of the rectangle piece, okay? You are going to need some Fabri-Tac or some kind of glue when we do these. And this is going to be like the easiest credit card swatch you've ever done. So, very fun. For hardware, we're going to need a couple of D-rings, a couple of swivel clasps. We need a slide adjuster. We're going to need a zipper end. We're going to need a zipper and a zipper pull. Now, I don't usually put feet on crossbody bags. However, if you would like to do that, you certainly can. It's your bag. You can do whatever you want. That's the greatest thing about bag making. Okay, and that's it. So we're going to start with step one. Step one is the crossbody strap. And before I go on, I did want to tell you that I'm using this mushroom color faux leather from my website. And I'm also using this pink crocodile from the website. I know a lot of you have this because we're actually getting low on quantity. So if you want some of this, you better snag it. We don't have much left. But these pair really well together, I think. I struggled a little bit with thread color because I don't have any mushroom colored thread color. So I'm just going to use a really neutral kind of cream color. And then my needle is a size 18. So I went ahead and kind of got started on this crossbody strap. I drew a line down the center. I put double-sided tape, 1/4 inch on both sides of the line. And I also like to put one along the short edge. A lot of times I do this because I punch the edges in some kind of shape. I'm just going to leave my edges straight this time, but it does help keep it all flat so that as you fold this, you don't have big bubbles here from the sides, not having double-sided tape all the way down. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and finish this up by peeling the back off of this tape and folding the other side over. Of course, being a crossbody strap, it's nice and long. It's basically the length of the faux. I always leave a little bit of a space between the two folded edges because as you fold this, you need some room for the fabric to go. If you don't have that, it's going to buckle on you and you have a better chance of it twisting. And of course, none of us want twisted handles. So you see here, there's a space, a small space there, so that as I fold this, you can even see how that fabric goes down in that little hole and it will fold nicely and it will fold flat. Okay, so let me keep folding. And of course, I usually want to make sure that as I fold, I'm not pressing down and pushing the fabric. All I'm doing is folding it up to just below the line and then just patting it down. Because the more that you push on it, the more you stretch it, and the more you stretch it, the more you're going to have a problem with your handle twisting. Okay, so we have all that done. Some clips here. Fold this in half and clip it. Now you've seen me before use some kind of edge punch for the edge of these straps, and then what I would do is edge coat it or base coat it and then edge coat it. You can certainly do that here, or you can use hardware on the edges. There's a lot of people that sell the strap ends, or you can just leave it, don't do anything at all, and then maybe just put a little bit of base coat and edge coat on it. So from here, I am going to put just a little bit more double-sided tape on this edge so that it will lay flat. So I'm just going to, this is 1/8 of an inch because this is what I have by me right now. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side so that when I peel the backing off, this will stick together nicely and I don't have to worry about the edges shifting. And then see how nice that is? There's no bubble with it puckering open. So we're just going to finish this up. And then we will stitch using an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And I have my edge guide here. Whenever I do any kind of strap or handle, I always use that. Okay, the other thing that I like to do is to start, I want to sew this edge here, the short edge as well. Because even if I am putting hardware, it's not a bad idea to sew that. I'll just kind of hold it all down so you can slip it in the hardware easier. But I'm going to start just right down here at the edge, on the edge that's folded. Do a few stitches, turn, and then come back up the edge that's open. And then what that's going to do, a couple things, it's going to allow me to stitch this edge first without having it shift. And then by starting at the edge here, when I turn this under to put my strap adjuster or my swivel clasps, it will be hidden. Any kind of knot will be hidden behind on the strap behind, you know, on the back here. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. As I stitch these handles and these straps as well, I'm trying to make sure that the two folded edges, so the edges here that you see, are together and one is not over the other, that they're actually matched up really good. As I get to where I started, I'm going to pull the threads through to the back and then stitch up to that hole. I'm going to try to start and stop in the same hole. I'm going to pull the threads through to the back here. And then we'll tie this knot off, singe it, and just make sure that when we fold this, we fold it towards the back. Give it just a little burn. Make sure they lay nice and flat. And there we go. Now, if you happen to have a little bit of fabric showing through on one side or the other. You could certainly take your scissors and just even it off there. I think I am fine. So from here, I'm going to take my slide adjuster, and let's see. This is the back. So I'm going to put it up the slide adjuster, down the other side. You can either mark your hole or you can, for lack of a better word, just kind of wing it. I fold it over about 1 inch, and then I'm going to use my punch a hole. You can either put 1 rivet here or 2 rivets. If you're going to put 2 rivets, you probably want to fold it over a little bit more than 1 inch. Probably going to do at least 1.5 inches or maybe even 2 inches to give yourself room to put the second rivet. Okay, now take your other swivel clasp. You're going to put it on the other side, and then we're going to move it all the way down so that we can take this the strap that we just passed through our swivel clasp, put it back up through the strap adjuster and down the other side. Now you're going to want to go set this rivet first. I'll do that in just a minute. Okay, so now this is what we have on this side. And the other side, we just have a regular old end. So take the other swivel clasp, go ahead and put it on, fold it over about 1 inch, or 2 if you want more, then 1 rivet. This here, this faux leather is perfect for 10mm rivets. And then you'll set this side as well. And then you will have your crossbody strap completed. So I will set those later. And we are going to move on to the gusset, which is step 2. So the first thing we want to do is to go ahead and get our side strap connectors. We want to draw a line down the center and then I'm going to use 1/2 inch double-sided tape and put that right over those lines. Okay, peel the backing off the tape, and you're going to fold the long edges into the center right on the line you drew. So this time, since we're not folding this again, we want our edges to meet, our long edges. Now, a little hint, a little trick I can tell you about is at the very edge of these, if you don't, we're going to be folding these over, putting the D-rings and folding them over. And we don't want the edges to be shown underneath. We don't want them peeking through. So a lot of times what I will do is just take and just cut off a little triangle, just like that. And there's no exact measurement for this, no rhyme or reason. Just cut that off on each side. And then when you fold this over, you want to bring that short edge that you cut all the way to the middle. So it's going to form a little bubble right there. See how I have a little bubble? That's not a problem. Just stick your scissors in there, make a slight little cut, and just lay it flat. You're asking the fabric to do something there that it can't do. It's straight fabric and you're asking it to curve, and it doesn't like that. It's perfectly normal. We'll just give it a little relief cut. So I'm going to fold this in. And you see I'm not running my hand across it. I'm just want to kind of pat it down. And these probably won't twist. And even if it does a little bit, you're going to be sewing them on the bag. So that will prevent any twisting from really showing. Okay, so see how that kind of tapers in right there? My little bubble. Just cut that, lay that flat. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the other one. And this doesn't have to go real deep, these little triangles. You just want them maybe about an inch down. So I have my little bubbles here. I'm just going to stick my scissors in and cut them and get them to lay flat. And you can see there's no space between these long edges. They match exactly right in the middle. So from here, line these up, and we're going to measure 3 inches down from your tapered edge if you did taper it. And I'm just going to draw a line. I'll do it this way so I can make sure. I'm going to make sure they're lined up real good. And we're going to go 3 inches. So from here, put some double-sided tape on there. I'm going to use 1/4 inch double-sided tape. I'm going to go right down the center, right on top of where those ends meet. I'm going to go just past that 3-inch mark that I made. I'll do that on the other side as well. You don't want to go too far up. You just want to go just past the mark. Go ahead and put a D-ring on, peel the back of the tape just a little bit so you get past your 3-inch mark, and line up this short edge with that 3-inch mark. And since you went past it with the double-sided tape, it'll hold that down for you. Okay. Have that done. So now we're going to take our side gusset pieces. I'm going to find the center of a short edge. And since I marked where my top was, I'm actually going to find the center of the other edge. It doesn't really matter because they should both be a 1/2 inch away from the short edge. But since I know I marked this and I know I made sure that was a 1/2 inch, just in case this one's off a little bit, I'm going to mark the bottom edge here. I'm just going to fold that in half. You can either mark it with a notch or a pen. See that little notch in there? So peel the backing off the tape. One of these strap connectors. We're going to line up the short edge of the strap connector with the bottom of the side gusset piece, and we're going to make sure this is centered. Take my ruler and just double check it. Looks good. Do the same thing with this piece. Make sure it's centered. one's off a little bit, so I'm just going to reposition. All right, looks good. So now from this top fold here, we want to measure down 1 inch. And this is a silver marking pen. I get these from Springfield Leather. You can get pens and then you can get refills for them. And they really last a while. I like them. So I will put a link below so that you can get some if you would like them. The great thing about it is it comes off, and sometimes you just need to put a little bit of water on it, but it'll come right off. Okay, so you see we have a line there. So we're going to stitch all the way up one edge, go across where that line is, and stitch down the other side. We're going to do this using about 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So here we go. There's, see the top there where that's stitched. So from here, I'm going to mark down 1/2 inch from that folded edge. And right in the center, I'm going to put a dot. We're going to punch a hole right there in the center. You may have to fold your exterior a little bit here. Roll that in a little bit. Here we go. We will put a rivet. I will set that rivet and then that will be done. So I'm going to do exactly the same thing for this other piece and then we'll move on. Okay, we have our side gusset pieces completed. So now we're going to take our bottom gusset piece and we're going to put it against this bottom edge. I'm going to put a few clips and we're going to stitch it on. You want to leave the seam allowance going towards the bottom piece. We're going to flip it and now we're going to top stitch. Just like that, looks good. We'll do the same thing for the other side. Go ahead and clip it. It doesn't matter which side you sew from here. You can either sew from the bottom gusset or the side gusset. Either one's fine. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing. We're going to make sure that this seam allowance stays going towards the bottom gusset. Okay, and we're going to top stitch. Okay, and our gusset's complete. So I do want to find the center while I have this in my hand. I'm just going to fold it in half, make sure the tops match, make sure my seams match. And I'm just going to either use a notch or a fabric pen to go ahead and clip those centers. And the other thing I'm going to do is clip the seam allowance a little bit because we're going to be stitching, obviously, this to the bag. So just at an angle here, I'm going to clip those off. It's just going to help a little bit with the bulk. So again, no rhyme or reason as to how deep or how far or how thick. It's just whatever you can. Usually I put my scissors in until I feel the seam, you know, the thread of the seam there where I can't go any further, and then I just clip. Okay, so let's move on to the next step, which is the exterior. So the first thing that we need to do for the exterior is to sew the exterior pocket together. So I'm going to put the lining piece on top of the exterior piece, right sides together. And remember, your decouville doesn't go all the way to the top. That's okay. We're going to stitch this. And since I accidentally drew a 1/2 inch line, I know exactly where to stitch. Works out well. Don't be afraid to mark your seam allowances if you need to. That is not a problem. From here, we're going to open this up, and we want the seam allowance to be going towards the lining. And I'm going to top stitch on the lining. And I'm kind of pulling the lining taut here. I'm not tugging it so it goes out of proportion, but I'm just holding it tight. So now that's stitched. Take your pocket and fold it wrong sides together. And as you do this, you want to pull it until the top of this folds right over your decouville. And when you do that, the ends of your pocket are going to meet. So if you clip up the bottom of your pocket here, it will fold right at the top of that decouville. And it's going to give you a nice crisp edge, and you won't have any lining peeking through the top. I don't like linings peeking through pockets. So we're going to top stitch from the right side right along the top edge of this pocket. Now this would be a great place to use your edge guide if you'd like. Matter of fact, I'll stick mine on. And now we have a fabulously top stitched pocket. So don't baste yet. We don't want to baste around the bottom of this pocket. We're going to take our pattern piece for our pocket. We're going to line up the bottom with the bottom of the pocket, and we want to go ahead and mark our snap placement. So make sure everything's lined up. We do want to do this on the back, which is why we don't do it until now. I'm even going to clip this to make sure it doesn't shift or move on me. Make sure everything looks good. Go ahead and mark it. You are going to need a magnetic snap. I didn't mention that in the beginning. So let's go ahead and set this magnetic snap. So the snap should be on the face part of the bag that's flipped over. It's going to give it a lot more stability than being on the deck or on the waterproof canvas lining. So I'm just going to go ahead and Make a couple of holes here. Now, you are putting it on a part that does not have any Decoville, right? You're putting it on, let me show you. You're putting it on this part up here, and our Decoville didn't go all the way to the top. So I am going to use a little piece of Decoville Heavy behind there, just to stabilize it, to make sure that the snap doesn't pull through to the front. You definitely don't want that to happen. So I'm just going to go ahead and punch a couple holes in this. Put this in. I'm going to put my Decoville on there. This is Decoville Heavy. You could use Peltex. Put my backing on. And then we will open this up. Now, if your Decoville Heavy is a little too long, where when you fold this back over it's in the way, just go ahead and clip it off. No problem at all. The other thing I'm going to do is put some double-sided tape over that, just to protect it from the lining. You can peel the backing off the tape if you want. It's not going to hurt it, or you can just leave it. Okay, the other thing I'm going to do is put my tag right here in the middle. It's a great place for it. And I have put it about 1.5 inches up. So I'm going to find the middle, which I can kind of tell by the pattern because I centered the pattern. But I'm just going to double check it and make sure. And we have a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I want it to be about 1 inch above, so I'm going to go 1.5 inches, which is a good spot. Go ahead and mark where the bottom prong goes, and then mark the top. Now this part does have Decoville light on the back, and there's not going to be any wear and tear on this. Nobody's going to be pulling on this. It's not like the snap, so I'm not going to worry about putting anything behind it. If I didn't have any Decoville light behind it, then I would. And a lot of you ask me where I get my tags. It's from an Etsy shop called Metal Things Art. Tasha St. James is her name, and I will link that below for you as well. And I appreciate that so many of you like it. Put some tape on that to hold it. All right, that's what we have so far. So take your one of your main pieces. At this point they're the same. Now if you like one better than the other, then you want to make that your front. I'm going to look at both of them to see how the pattern matches up on both of them. That one's okay. Let me see if this one's any better. I think that one's a little better. So I'm going to make this one my front. So take your front pattern piece, and if you haven't already marked the place for your snap, go ahead and mark it. Now, I'm going to tell you, I always double check to make sure that I'm on target before I make any holes. Even though the pattern says to do it there, sometimes, you know, when we cut our pattern pieces, we're off a little bit, or sometimes when we cut our main fabrics, we're off a little bit. So I'm just going to line this up, throw a couple of clips on here, and just make sure it looks like it is on target. And the other thing I want to mention, your pocket is slightly larger than your main fabric by about 1/8 of an inch, and it should be. You don't think you cut it wrong. You didn't. Go ahead and push the side up to the side of your bag. That is correct. We want to have almost like a little pucker in the pocket right now. Okay, see how that's kind of puckering? We want that because when we turn it, it's going to pull straight and we don't want any puckers in the back part of this bag. So it's purposely cut a little bit larger just for that reason, okay? So let me do, again, I'm just gonna kind of make sure everything looks like it's gonna line up, and it is. So that means I did pretty good cutting. So now we're going to install the other side of our snap. On the dot. And this is going to be your female side. Get it lined up here. Now I do have Decoville on the back of this piece. So I'm just going to put the backing on, the washer. There it is. Trying to disappear on me. I'm going to double check to make sure that this matches up okay. Because if it doesn't, you can, at this point, move it if you need to. Just a little, but it's perfect, so I'm good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and put the tape on the back. And snap it on there. I'm going to match up the centers here at the bottom. Put a few clips, and then go ahead and make sure my sides are even all the way down so I can get that little bit of pucker in there. So you see, just a little bit, we're going to base this in place. So there is the front panel. Nice deep pocket. Fits lots of good stuff. All right, we are going to move on and we're going to get prepared to put the cording on. I have my piping pieces ready here to go, and I have the cording. The cording is about 3/8 of an inch thick. We do sell it on the website, and I think it's 3-yard bundles, and it's cheap. So go ahead and grab a few of these if you need it. There are many ways to do this, and I'm going to show you the way I do it. But if you would prefer to use glue, you can do that. Or if you would rather use pre-made piping, you can do that as well. Or don't use any piping. I mean, there's nothing says you have to do that with this bag. So what I did is I took my piping pieces and I drew a line down the center. And halfway between that line, and I know you can't see it because it's black on black, but halfway between the line and the edge, I went ahead and put some 1/4 inch double-sided tape. And what I'm going to do is the line represents where the cording is going to be laid. And then I'm going to take and squeeze it together and let the double-sided tape hold it and basically hold it baste it together for me essentially, so I'm not having to sew it. But you can if you'd like. I mean, again, however you want to do this, there's so many different ways. The other thing I want to do is start about an inch down. So you can mark that with a pen, but you don't want to put the cording all the way to the end because you want some space between where the cording ends and the end of your fabric so that you can turn this, because we can't go all the way to the top of the bag on it. Even when you look at designer bags, the piping does not go all the way to the top of the bag. It veers off just before the top. And they do that because you can't top stitch with this in the very top. Okay, so I'm going to peel the backing off this tape. I'm going to take my cording piece and I'm going to stick it right on top of the line, right at that 1 inch mark, not all the way to the edge, but at the 1 inch mark. I'm just going to lay it down in there and then fold these edges up together. And I do want to try to get this as tight as possible. And the edges don't have to be perfect, but you do want them to be fairly close matching. And I'm just going to keep laying it down and keep squeezing this together. Now you don't really want to put the double-sided tape all the way at the edge of this piping because you do want the cording, you want it to be snug in there. You want the piping piece to hug this cording pretty well. And you can even kind of squeeze and rub your finger right up against that. And you can see where that is. So if you had the double-sided tape way out here, you would just have like a big hole and you'd have cording running through the middle of it and the cording wouldn't stay. You'd be able to pull it right out. I don't want to be able to pull this out. I want it to stay really tight. I just don't want the cording to end up on the double-sided tape. I want it to be next to the double-sided tape. And if it is on there, just like it is right here for me, I'm going to kind of move it over. And if there's a couple places where maybe it's not holding 100% right, you can always put some clips on there. And then as we get to the end, cut this so that I can use this for the other side. And then we don't want to close this up all the way to the edge. So what I'm going to do is leave about, I don't know, about a 2-inch space. Because we're going to have to clip this cording off when we get to the other side. So we're going to start sewing on one side, and then when we get to the other side, we'll have to clip it off. Okay, just like that. So on the side where you started, you can feel where your cording is. And right where that is, you want to cut out a little notch pointing towards the cording. So I'm just going to cut a little triangle out like that. And it's like that little edge of the triangle, little point of the triangle is pointing right towards where the cording is ending. So that I can take this and fold it on top of each other and put a clip. Okay. The other thing we want to do is mark on our bag 1 inch down. We're going to do 1 inch down from each side, the right side, the left side. I'm just making a little mark in the seam allowance. So now take your piping, this folded edge, and you're going to put it right underneath that mark. So I'm going to put the folded edge right on that mark. And I'm just going to put some clips in here. Sometimes I feel like strongman over here, break clips. You go to squeeze them and they fall apart. Now as you get toward your corner, you want to put little snips because you're asking the fabric to turn and it doesn't want to turn. So you don't want to go all the way to the cording. You're just going to go about halfway on the piping piece. And that way you'll see as you turn this, all those little areas open up. And that's exactly what you want. And then we'll clip the bottom. When we get to the other side, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to put little snips in here. There's no rhyme or reason for how many or how far apart. You just don't want to go all the way to the cording. You only want to go about halfway. Okay, so as we approach our other line on the other side, I'm going to snip off. You see I give you lots of space and lots of room for the cording. You're going to snip that off and then you're going to open this back up. And right where your line is, you're going to clip your cording. So I think you can see that little purple line there. We're going to clip it right at that line. So now the cording stops right there. We're going to fold this piping piece back over, close it up, and then again, right where you can feel that cording, we're going to snip in a little triangle with the point of the triangle pointing right towards where the cording ends. You're going to fold it just like you did the other side and make sure that the top of the fold is actually on the line. Now mine is a little beyond the line and I can't fold this anymore. So what that means is that I did not clip my piping or my cording piece quite enough. So I'm just going to open this back up and clip a little more off. And I'm going to have to just make a little snip here, make it into a little triangle. And now I'm going to fold this over. And I am right at my mark. You want to take the time to make sure you get that exactly right. Otherwise, when you look at your bag, your cording is not going to be the same distance away from the top of your bag. So from here, we want to stitch this on. Now, there's no reason to get close yet. We just want to basically base this on so that when we put the gusset on, we know that we're not going to have to worry about trying to catch this piping piece in the middle. So I'm going to leave my regular foot on right now, and I am just going to stitch this on. So that's all basted on. It's going to clip these back a little bit. And I'm going to repeat this exact process to put the piping on the back side. We have both piping pieces actually on the bag. So now we want to put our gusset on. So I'm going to start with my front piece first, and I'm just going to fold it in half and make sure I know exactly where the center is. You have some bulk here, so mark the center however you can. And take your gusset. We're going to put the gusset right sides together with the bag, matching up our centers first. Okay, put a few clips. I might put a few more here. All right, now from here, take the side and match up the side. So we're matching up the top side with the top of the bag. And then you're going to clip down the side, making sure everything matches up. Until you get down to the bottom. And you're going to have, something like that. Looks like it's not going to fit. You need to take small snips in your gusset. You're always going to snip your straight piece. So the straight piece was the piece of piping here, and the straight piece is the actual gusset here. So it's going to take a couple of snips here. Don't go all the way to your decoville. You're only going about halfway. And then you can actually take this and just kind of push it down. Those little snips will separate, and then you can clip. So see how those snips separated there? That's what you want to happen. So that way the fabric can curve. So we're going to do the same thing on this end. You're going to match up the top. And then when we get down here, we're going to snip. So that will fit right in. And you may have to push it, and that's okay. If it doesn't look like it's fitting very well, maybe you have to make a little bit deeper snips. You'd rather not snip enough than snip too much. You can always snip some more. All right. So this is what we have. Now, this is where you want to get really close on your foot. So I'm going to change to my piping foot. The piping foot looks like this. You have this ridge here that the piping fits in, and your other section here has that as well, since it's a walking foot, and you can see how those two sections match up, and the piping slides through right here, right next to your needle. So if you don't have a piping foot and you use a lot of piping, it is definitely worth getting one. If you don't have a piping foot, you can use your zipper foot. Now your zipper foot's going to get close. It's not going to get as close as your piping foot, but it will be much better than your regular foot. When you remove, you have two different, of course, things to remove here, because you have your walking foot. If you have a walking foot machine, you have your back foot and your top foot. So we're going to take both of those off. Slide this on. Tighten that. And now I'm doing this on camera because I want you to see how easy it is. It doesn't take that much time. It's not that hard. And it's going to be worth doing. So don't get lazy and say, oh, well, you know, it'll be all right. Go ahead and take the time to do it. Okay, and just like that, it's done. If I can get the screw tightened. There we go. Stick my thread through the hole here. Okay. So let's stitch. So as you go around this gusset, you really want to, or the corner, you really want to try to lay this gusset down to go around. Another thing that sometimes comes in handy are hemostats. So hemostats are these things that nurses use that lock. You see there you go. See how you can't take them apart? And then to take them apart, you have to squeeze them and open them up. And it helps to, because they're not sharp, it helps to take your main fabric here, your gusset fabric. And you notice I am stitching from the gusset side. You can take it, lock it in, and then you can kind of pull to make sure that it stays in line. So I actually use these a lot. And turn a little. You can also use an awl Oh. This is actually it. I don't want to show this to you. So once you're done, you want to take a look. And I could feel actually at the bottom here, my piping foot went off my piping, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. So I'm going to just turn this. Okay, so see how like the piping's nice and tight here, everything looks good, and then down here all of a sudden you have this great big gap, and even on the back you can see my basting stitches. That's how far I came off. That is not a problem. All we're going to do is stitch closer. I'm not going to take it apart. I'm just going to come back, figure out where I started going off. Get back on. And the fact that I can see my stitches where I was off helps, because I know I have to get a lot closer. So now it is much better. I think I might could still get a little bit closer right here. Okay, but just keep going around until you feel comfortable with your stitches. Look, your piping looks nice. Again, no reason to take apart over and over. And before you turn, and we obviously need to put the other side on, but you do want to go ahead and cut your seam allowances back, and especially cut these corners so they turn nice. So I always like to keep a seam allowance up here at the top so that I can open this up when I turn it down. It's going to help to have some. So I start right about where the cording is, and then just go ahead and cut this back. Okay, I'm going to clip all the way around, and then I'm going to repeat for the other side. Once you're happy with the cording, the way it looks, everything's good to go, you can go ahead and turn the bag. So we'll go ahead and do that now. From here, before I do anything else, I am going to take my little mini iron and I'm going to stick it in here and iron from the wrong side because I want to make sure that I don't have any wrinkles in the bag, and we're not turning it again because this is a drop-in lining. So I will do that, and then we are going to put some tape at the top here, and I'll show you how to do that in just a minute. I have the bag all ironed. That makes a huge difference. If you don't have a small iron, I would say get one for sure, because that's really, it does wonders once you turn a bag, to go ahead and stick the iron inside and take care of that. You'll see that the pocket no longer sticks out. You remember how this pocket was sticking out a little bit? It's not going to do that. Now that we've turned it, we've got something taking up that 1/8 of an inch space on each side, and so now it lays nice and flat. If we had not done that, meaning if you don't match up your sides and get that little pucker before you turn it, then the back of your bag is going to pull. Okay? So I'm going to use some double-sided tape. You can use either a 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch, whichever one you have. And I'm just going to put it all on the top, on the wrong side. Now when you do this, you want to make sure that you open up your seam allowance on these sides. Okay, so I'm just going to open that up and I'm going to lay the tape right on top. And I got to see what I'm doing here. So I'm going to do it and then I will show you what I'm doing here. See if I can somewhat do this. Okay, so let's see, maybe you can see it from that end. See how I opened up that seam allowance there? You want to do that as you put this all the way around. And I'm putting it at the very, very top. So if your machine does not like double-sided tape, I would say use 1/4 inch, because by putting this at the top, when you fold it over, the tape's going to be out of your seam allowance when we top stitch this closed. I've tried to put this on before I turn it before, and it's a little easier to do. However, when I turn it, sometimes the backing of the tape comes off and then I have a mess. So I'll let you kind of decide what's easier for you. I just started doing it after and it seems to work okay. All right, once I get to my starting point, I'm just going to clip that off. And stick it from me. See how it's holding those seam allowances down? That's what you want. So go ahead and peel the backing off this tape and use your Decoville as a guide as far as where to fold it. So you can fold it a 1/2 inch over, but that Decoville, since you measured and you drew a line, you know you have your Decoville exactly a 1/2 inch from the top, so you can just feel where that Decoville is and fold it right over the edge. It's going to give you a nice crisp edge. Let's stand this up so I can see it. Now, if you used foam here instead, you can certainly do that. You want to keep your foam probably out of your seam allowance and see if you can fold over your foam. Okay, and see we have a nice crisp edge there all the way around. Pretty cool. So from here we can set this aside and let's move on to our zipper placket. First thing you want to do is take your zipper and you're going to mark an inch down from one side so that way we can pinch it. Take a few pins. So there's my marks. That's where we want to fold it. So I'm just going to pull this apart a little bit. I'm going to pinch right on that line and then fold it over at a 90-degree angle and put a pin. I'm going to do the same thing with the other side. If you do it right on that line, then your teeth should match up perfectly. Okay, we're going to baste the little right angles on the zipper. You can do this by hand if you prefer. I always find it helpful to have the zipper tail behind the machine instead of in front. So all this extra zipper I always have behind me. Don't know why that makes it easier, but it does. So here we are. So now take your zipper placket pieces. You have 2 lining pieces and you have 2 main pieces. And you're going to lay them down. We're going to put 1/2 inch double-sided tape along the short edge. Okay, let's cut these apart and we're going to fold 2 edges, so both edges of one main piece and one edge of all the other pieces. So we have one of our main pieces here. And if you want to mark down 1 inch so you know exactly how far 1/2 inch is, you can certainly do that. I just kind of use the edge of my tape as a guide. So we have a main piece. On this main piece, we're going to just do 1 edge. And then we're going to do the same thing on these lining pieces, just do 1 edge. And then, to hold all of this in place as we sew it, we're going to use our 1/8 of an inch double-sided tape, or we're going to start with the piece that we folded both edges on. We're going to put 1/8 of an inch on there, and we're going to do the same thing with one of the lining pieces, but obviously don't go all the way to the edge because you still have to fold this over. So we're just going to kind of lay it down. We're going to guesstimate about where we're going to fold it. Just like that. So peel the backing off of the tape for your main. And I'm going to lay the top edge of my zipper, so that where this fold is, just underneath the fold. And it's going to be about, maybe about about 3/8 of an inch, I would say. Don't pull your zipper, you just want to lay the rest of your zipper down. So that's about how far away it is. And then the rest of the zipper is just along the edge. So peel the tape, 1/8 of an inch tape off one of the lining pieces. We're going to take the edge that's folded and we're going to lay it on top of the other one of the edges here. So basically we're matching up these edges. We know the edge is going to look good because they're both folded and now they're matched up. On the other side, I'm going to peel the backing off the tape. Now this is the 1/2 inch tape. And I'm going to fold this up until it meets the edge of the main zipper placket piece. So now I know they have matched exactly. If I folded this first, I could have been off a little bit and then they may not match exactly. So I just want to take advantage of waiting to fold that. So this double-sided tape does a couple things. It obviously prevents you from having to use clips, although if you still want to use clips, you can. The other thing it does is it prevents it from shifting and it prevents the zipper from stretching as much. So you have less of a chance of having a wavy zipper by using this. Another thing, I always like to sew with the wrong side of the zipper facing up. I just feel like it has less bumps and it works a little bit better. So we're going to do this with a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. And take your time with the zipper placket because it's at the very top of your bag and you're going to see it all the time and you want to make sure everything looks good and it's not crooked. So let's just cut this little tail off here. And go ahead and hit that with a lighter. Make sure it's not going to come apart. And then we're going to fold wrong sides together. Oops, didn't clip. There we go. Now I'm just kind of finger pressing this and pulling it flat, making sure it looks okay. I'm going to look at the space between the edge of the placket and the zipper just to make sure it looks even all the way down, which looks good to me. So now we're going to repeat with the other side. Now we don't have 2 of these edges folded, remember. So let's put 1/8 of an inch double-sided tape here. So I'm going to take my main piece first. So I'm going to lay it so that it's even with this main piece that I already have. Make sure that's even and lined up with the very edge of the zipper tape. I'm going to lay the rest of the zipper tape down even with the edge. And now I'm going to peel the backing off of this part and fold it so it's exactly the same as the other main piece. And sometimes this might be more than a 1/2 inch, sometimes this might be less than a 1/2 inch. It doesn't matter what it is, it just needs to be even. And see, it's about the same distance from my teeth. So let's peel this one off, do the same thing. You get the idea now. Make sure everything's lined up. All right. So again, I'm going to stitch from the wrong side, meaning with the zipper up, or zipper wrong side up, so essentially the lining side. Clip our little tail here. Those always go flying. I find them all over the place when I'm done filming. It's crazy. Okay, then go ahead and fold this back. Now, I like to wait to top stitch until they're both done because I want to make sure I don't have to take any more stitches, meaning I don't have to get any closer to the teeth on one end or another to make sure everything's even. If you top stitch one and then you realize you need to get a little closer on that side, now you have a problem. So I like to wait and make sure that they both look about the same distance before I top stitch. This is what we have. So now I'm going to top stitch the end, short end's closed, top stitch along the zipper, top stitch the short end closed, and then just baste this side closed. And you're going to see that sometimes I take some hand cranks here. You have a lot of bulk, you know, in this area because you have a very short, only 1/4 inch seam allowance, and you have your lining, basically 4 layers of your lining, 4 layers of your main, you have your zipper in between. So it can get quite bulky. If you're using leather, you can hit this with a hammer before you stitch, helps tremendously. Sometimes it can help with faux, but a lot of times what you'll see me do is just do hand stitches over that area, crank it, just to make sure that I don't skip stitches, that I don't have stitches that are maybe one, different lengths, and I also don't want my presser foot to eat up my faux. So sometimes I'll even put a piece of leather under there just to make sure that doesn't happen. So right in here is where, first of all, you see my presser foot's in the air. I'm going to use a piece of leather as a little hump jumper. I'm going to kind of roll that up and stick that underneath. And then I'm also going to use it to protect my faux. So I'm taking, when lifting my foot and putting it just underneath my foot. Okay, same thing over here. I'm going to do a couple hand cranks on this side. So at this point, I don't even have my foot on the pedal because I don't want to accidentally, obviously, sew my finger. There we go. Just kind of get over all those humps and lumps. Whoops. All right, so now let's baste this close. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. See, in this area, we're even going over the zipper teeth, so you've got extra bulk there as well. Okay. Do some hand cranks. I messed up right there a little bit. I'm going to show you what I did. Let's see what we can do to fix it. So I did not get close enough here. See how on the ends here, see how nice that's 1/8 of an inch? This isn't 1/8 of an inch. I just messed that up totally. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch 1/8 of an inch on this side, and then over here I'm going to stitch 1/4 of an inch, and that way I'll just have 2 rows of stitching. We're going to see. Pull my threads through back here and tie them off. Let me just singe that. So sometimes mistakes can turn into decorative elements. I guess that's a fair statement. All right, I'm going to pull those threads through and tie them off. And now it looks like it was on purpose, which is the best kind of mistake. On purpose kind. Yeah, I meant to do that. Yeah. I think that looks good, actually. I like that. I know the thread is kind of a neutral color, but I think you can see that. So just to kind of have it match, I'm going to do the same thing on this side. And then once I do that, we'll move on to the lining. I have to say, that's not bad at all. I actually kind of like it. I was thinking about doing another stitch along here too. And I might do that. I don't know, I'm going to think about that. Okay, we're going to set that aside, and now we're going to move on to step 4, which is the lining. And I'm just going to start with these credit card slots. So you've got a lining piece and you've got a main piece for both of them. And if you line up the bottoms, you will see that the linings do not go to the top on either one. And even the square piece, the sides don't even come to the edges, and that's okay. The kind of funky looking piece does, but we don't want the lining to go all the way to the sides on this piece because I don't like lining peeking through. I want to make sure that that's hidden. So we're going to take some Beacon Fabri-Tac or whatever kind of glue you prefer. You can even use some double-sided tape here if you want. I'm just going to use a little bit of this glue. And we're going to start out by drawing a line a 1/2 inch down. So essentially, kind of let that glue come down. Essentially where the lining, like where you cut your lining piece for your funky looking piece, and then a 1/2 inch down on the other. So just draw a line all the way across like that on both pieces. It's going to help you match up the lining piece. Okay, so we're going to put glue below that line. So I'm just going to, and of course the Beacon Fabri-Tac really sticks quickly and well. So you're going to work pretty fast with this. I'm going to put a bunch on there, and I have these little glue spreaders, which I got from the Buckle Guy. I use them when working with leather a lot, so try to remember to link that down below for you as well. And we're just going to glue these pieces wrong sides together. So I'm going to match up the bottoms, and your top should be right at that line. Okay, I'll let that dry for just a second. I'm going to do the same thing with this one. I used to use my finger for this, and then I realized I just got stuff everywhere. So I decided to get me some spreaders, which they work fabulous. I love them. Okay, we're going to put wrong sides together, and we're going to center this so that you have a little bit of your face showing on the back here. See, a little bit on this side and a little bit on the side. It's just a teeny tiny little bit. All right, now we're going to take some clips, but I'm going to use some tape. I'm going to put it along the top edge of each of these pieces. And we're going to peel the tape off and fold it over. Now when you fold this piece over the top of this, you're going to match up these edges here. So that's an easy way to know you're folding it over a 1/2 inch. You don't have anything to match it up here, so you could certainly draw a line 1 inch down and fold this to that line, or I'm just going to kind of feel where the lining is and fold it over. All right, I'm going to give this a second for the glue to dry before we top stitch. And we're going to move on to the slip pocket. So the slip pocket, it looks like I need to put a couple clips on this here. Let me do that. The tape is trying to pull the glue off of the main piece. Okay, so let's set these aside. So your slip pocket piece, because this is the skinny, your slip pocket piece is pretty skinny. So fold it wrong sides together, and we're going to stitch up each side. I'm just going to throw a clip on each side, and then we will stitch. Now, a few of you have asked me about stitching on this machine. You know, stitching my lining on it. If I was here sewing by myself, I would take this to my domestic machine and I would stitch it there, because these industrial machines are not made for fabrics this thin. Now I just kind of make this work for filming purposes. But in, I'm saying quote unquote real life, I would go and I would certainly stitch that somewhere else. So we're going to fold this corner. So this is our fold right here. We're going to fold that right on our stitch line. We're going to stick our finger and our thumb in there. We're going to hold that fold down, and then we're just going to turn it. And do the same thing on this side. We're going to hold that down. We're going to turn it. Put the rest of it through, and then we're going to just stick our wonderful turning tool that I know so many of you have, that you have bought from me. It is fabulous. And if you don't have one yet, it's a good investment. It's not that much, and it really helps get these corners poked out. There we go. Now, you cannot iron the wrong side of waterproof canvas, but you can lightly iron the right side. So I'm going to go and just iron this pocket flat, and then we'll put the accent piece on. Okay, so that got that a little bit flatter. I'm just going to baste the top closed. Mine's not 100% even, so I'm going to just trim that so it's nice and even. Then you're going to take your accent piece. I'm going to put a little bit of, you can clip this if you prefer not to use double-sided tape. I'm going to put a little bit of double-sided tape on each side. I'm using 1/4 of an inch here, but you could certainly use 1/8 of an inch. Peel the backing off one side, center this on there. Peel the backing off the other side, flip this over. And then we're going to top stitch it closed. Once we do that, we're going to trim the sides even with the pocket. And we have our slip pocket ready to go. So we're going to set that aside for just a minute, and let's go ahead and top stitch our credit card slots here. So from the right side, I'm just going to stitch 1/8 of an inch. Our credit card slots are ready. Simple, isn't it? So let's work on our key fob. We're going to take our key fob piece. We're going to take some 1/4 inch double-sided tape, or you can just clip this. I'm going to put it down one side. Peel the backing off the tape and match the 2 long ends. Whoops, it's not matched. You can do the best you can. We're going to trim some of this off, so. All right, you want to go ahead and stitch about 1/4 of an inch from the long edge, or from the cut edge. Now I'm going to go to my table and take my rotary cutter and ruler, and I'm going to cut this seam allowance down to 1/8 of an inch. It's going to give me a nice clean edge here. And then we'll put our swivel clasp on. So this here is about what I took off of this. It's just a little bit, just enough to make this a nice smooth edge. So you put your swivel clasp on one edge, fold it, use your punch to punch a hole. Put a rivet. I will set this rivet in just a few minutes, and then our key fob is done. So let's take a look at our lining gusset. So on the back of my top pieces, my upper gusset pieces, I have these 1/2 inch marks, which I put my decaville against. So I'm going to use the other side to put against the right side of my gusset, just because I know that that mark is exactly a 1/2 inch. And it's going to give me a nice edge at the top. We're going to sew these on and flip them and top stitch. Now, when you top stitch these, the seam allowance is going to want to go towards the lining. You want to make it stay up towards the upper lining and top stitch on the upper lining. our gusset's complete. So let's set that aside. So now we get to have some fun with the lining. So take your 2 lining pieces. You have lining 1 and lining 2. Lay lining 1 right side up in front of you. The edges are slightly tapered so that when you sew your gusset on, you don't have to take a larger seam allowance. So when you go to line up the ruler, you're going to see that your ruler is crooked. So don't worry about this edge being slanted. Just line your ruler up with the top edge. And I give you the measurement in the pattern as to how far to come over. And you can either draw this all the way down or you can make a mark at the top and then line up. That's actually what I'm going to do. Make a mark at the top, line up, matching my top, and then just come on down. Now this is a Sew Line Air Erase pen that I'm using. So set that aside for a second. Take your other lining piece, right side down, and from the left side again, I give you a measurement. You want to go ahead and measure over and down. Whoop, that did not mark. Try that again. There we go, sort of. Huh. Does not like that. There we go. The other thing you want to do is mark from the top edge and from the bottom edge a 1/2 inch up and down. So I say up and down, 1/2 inch up from the bottom, a 1/2 inch down from the top. That's going to be our start and stop stitch line. So now take your lining piece 2, lay it right side together with lining piece 1, and match up those lines. So you can see here, right there, you can see how those lines, you just want to match them up and make sure they're exactly even with each other on the top and the bottom. I'm going to put some clips to hold it all in place. Make sure it's matched up at the bottom as well. And now we're going to stitch from that 1/2 inch line all the way down to the other 1/2 inch line. Don't go beyond your 1/2 inch lines. So from here, I'm still looking at lining piece 2 because this is a short piece. I'm going to flip the whole thing over. So now lining piece 1 is at the top. The wrong side of lining piece 1 is facing me. And once again, I give you measurements in the pattern, and you need to mark a certain amount away from your stitch line at the top and at the bottom. And you really just want to mark it a 1/2 inch because we're going to clip in a 1/2 inch at every single one of these marks. So let me just make sure. I got a little overzealous with my line, so let me make sure I don't clip too much. Now when you do this, make sure you're only clip through lining piece 1. Not lining piece 2, just lining piece 1. And I'm going to clip a 1/2 inch. All right, take some 1/4 inch double-sided tape and lay it in between your clip marks. Your snips, in between your snips. All right. So there's my snips. And there's my double-sided tape right in between. Top and bottom, same thing. I'm going to peel the backing off the tape. And we're going to fold this center section over 1/2 inch. Now your stitching stopped at 1/2 inch. Your clips stop at 1/2 inch. So you should be able to just fold this over where all of that kind of ends. And if you didn't clip enough, you can clip a little more. If you got little puckers, it should all lay nice and flat. That's what we have. So now you want to take lining 1 and put it on one side, and you want to take lining 2 and put it on the other side. You're going to kind of pull them apart from each other. And go ahead and clip the sections that you just folded over at the top and the bottom. So we now want to stitch along the bottom edge and then all the way up to our other 1/2 inch mark up here, our other 1/2 inch edge. So essentially what we're doing here is creating our divider. If you want to draw a line between the two cut edges, you can do that to help you make it nice and straight. Okay, so we're going to sew along the bottom edge, and then we're going to come up that line, and we're going to stop right up here. And we're just stitching with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance at the bottom. Back stitch real good here where you're ending. And now we have our divider. So once we get a little further along, we're going to stick our divider stabilizer in here, and then we'll stitch that closed. But we're not going to do that yet. Instead, we want to take all of these pieces, right? So we have all of the divider pieces on one side and this other long piece on this side. And we're going to work with this side over here. So find the center by folding this short edge right here over to your divider. Matching up your tops, because remember your side has a little angle, so it's going to be off a little. And I just want to measure or mark the top, just so I know where the center is. Since you're using waterproof canvas, you could almost just crease it. It usually creases pretty well, so you can kind of know where the center is there too. All right, so on this side, let's put our credit card slots. So take 1/8 of an inch double-sided tape. And you can put it at the bottom of this funky piece. This is the credit card slot 1. Okay, and I give you measurements in the pattern again. I'm going to measure down and center this credit card slot. Now we're going to stitch it just at the bottom. Make sure all your dividers and everything else is out of the way. You don't want to accidentally stitch that with it. Back stitch real good. And now you're going to take your other divider or credit card slot, this credit card slot piece 2. We're going to put 1/8 of an inch double-sided tape down one side, across the bottom, and then up the other side. I'm also going to mark the center. Because we are going to stitch up the center to divide this into 2. So peel the backing off the tape and we're going to lay it 1/2 inch below the top of this slot, which should be just at where this little cut piece ends. So now we're going to stitch down. I'm going to back stitch here really good over these edges, across, up and down the same line. If you do 2 lines here, you're not going to have enough room for your credit card. So make sure you go up and down the same line, over and then back up, and make sure you back stitch on this side as well. You're going to stitch this on at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So right here I'm going to turn, I'm going to go all the way around, and I'm going to come right back down those same stitch lines. I'm going to turn again. And one more time. And there we have it. So let's test them out and see if they work. They should be tight. There we go. They will stretch a little. Make sure that one's a little tight. I thought it looked a little off. I think it's going to be good though. So easy peasy, credit card slots. And if you're using leather especially, it'll stretch a little bit and you can fit multiple cards in one. Got 2 of them in there. So now take all of your pieces and flip it to the other side. we're going to find the center here. And we're going to put our slip pocket on. I'm going to use a couple pins on this. And since it's not a super wide slip pocket, we're just going to go down and over. Now I like to put some rivets in the side of this pockets, the slip pockets, because I feel like there's a lot of stress on these, and I certainly don't want anything to happen where it falls off. So I'm just going to do that real quick. Making sure I don't rivet through my divider or my water bottle section. I'd like to say I only do that once, but I actually have sewn pockets closed more than once. So, you know, sometimes it happens. Now I am going to put a little bit of Decoville Heavy behind this because it's waterproof canvas, it's not that thick, and it's certainly not going to hurt to have it. Okay, so I'll set those, and we'll finish up this lining. We need to put our zipper placket on. So when you do this, you want to put the open edge, or the edge with your right angle, the edge that when you open the zipper, it's going to be the furthermost open edge. You want your actual placket to open in the direction of your gusset, is what I'm trying to, or not your gusset, in the direction of your, that's terrible, in the direction of your divider. Okay, so see how the zipper is going towards the divider. That's what you want. So I'm going to butt it right up against it. So you're not centering this zipper pocket, which I know is strange, but it's going to leave you a little over a ½ inch over here on this side. Okay. You do the same thing with the other one. Make sure you don't clip anything underneath it. And remember, we have a ½ inch seam allowance, so that's going to bring this right about even, right to the edge when we have it zipped. Okay, take your key fob and slip it underneath. Towards one of the open sections. Basically, one of the, you don't want to have to open your entire bag to reach in to get your keys. You want it to be right there in the front. Now, I will say that Leah, the person who inspired this bag from the beginning, actually tested this little bag for me. And one thing she suggested, which actually I thought was a really good idea, is to put the key fob in the pocket, in the front pocket. Instead of putting it inside your bag, actually attach it here so that your keys are in this pocket. And you can easily do that when you sew your pocket together. Just attach it here, and then you don't have to open and close your bag every single time you need your keys. You can just reach in here and it'll be on your key fob. So I thought that was a really great idea. And actually I meant to do that in this video and it didn't happen. So, okay, we're gonna baste these on. Now make sure when you baste, you've got everything out of your way. Baste it, okay? Same thing on this one. Get everything out of my way and baste it on. All right, next thing, go ahead and just clip your zipper out of the way so you don't accidentally sew over it. And I'm going to take your upper lining. There's my line. So I'm going to put the other side, right sides together with the bag. Now, lining piece, this lining piece extends not straight as you have this bag laying down, but actually you have to fold the divider down out of the way . And this is the other piece. This is the actual full piece of lining here. Okay, so make sure that you're stitching this on right. See how this whole thing over here is the other side of the lining. And here's your divider. So make sure you're stitching your upper lining properly. So if I go like this, I can hold that nice and flat, and half of it is going to be where the zipper placket is, and half of it's going to be where the water bottle section is. And then once you get it on, you can just flip it up. Make sure your lining, or the seam allowance is going up towards your upper lining. Fold it, and then we'll top stitch. So now, here's your other lining side. We're going to make sure all this is out of the way. Flip it down and then pin or clip the other side. Pin, oh my gosh. I don't know where that came from. Pin hardly anything. All right, stitch it on. And then we are going to flip it up, making sure the seam allowance is underneath, and top stitch. So now, this is what we have. We have both sides with our upper lining. So we need to find the center of each lining side. So if you hold it like this, you see where the divider goes. We actually need to put our divider stabilizer in first. So let's go ahead and do that. So take your divider stabilizer and just slide it inside your divider. Sometimes it takes a little bit of shimmying. I think that what happens is that with this waterproof canvas, the glue side of the Decoville sometimes gets hung up on the back side of the waterproof canvas. So once it's in there, go ahead and clip the top. And now we're just going to stitch an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance right across this divider. So now that's closed. We have it in, and everything's looking good. Okay, so now we need to find the center of each side of the lining. And I wait till now to do it because lining 1 is so much bigger than it needs to be when you start out. You can't really find the center at that point. So I'm going to go ahead, and sometimes even where you stitch the divider, you know, I'll give you measurements, but if you're off just a tad, then your centers may be off. So wait till now to do this. So just fold this in half, find your center. And it's going to look like it's off because when you open this back up, it's not going to be in the center of this section, but it is in the center of the entire piece. So you're matching your curved corners. Find the center of your gusset. Folding it in half. All right, and now we're going to put the gusset on the same way we did the mane. Now you do have this divider to contend with, but it is a 1/2 inch from the bottom of the bag here, so you should have no problem sewing it on. So I'm going to start by matching up my centers, just like normal. And I'm going to turn this and match up my sides. I'm going to make sure that the point where the 2 upper linings meet is matched up exactly correct. As you get to the curve, it's not going to want to lay flat. That is okay. Just make little clips, snips. Go ahead and fit it in. Now, if it's not fitting 100% right, you may need to make your snips a little deeper. So I'm going to move, this is what I have. So don't try to hook it up over here. We need to move the divider out of the way. Kind of stick it in the middle here. Get that key fob in there. And then come around to the other upper lining over here. And then we're going to have to snip Okay, so this is what we have. You can see, I'll turn it around, you can see the lining piece, how it's all together with the gusset. And then this other piece, it's connected, but it's just kind of stuffed in the middle. So we are going to stitch this gusset on. I like to start exactly where those two upper linings meet, put my needle in, and then back stitch to the top. And then come down. Adjust your gusset as you need to. And then just make sure you do not stitch on your upper lining. Oh, not your upper lining, your zipper placket. I'm going to move that out of the way. So there we have that side stitched on. We're going to cut those seam allowances back. We're going to make sure that we open up, don't cut all the way to the top. You're going to cut just beyond the upper linings. Go ahead and trim these back, and then we're going to clip the other side of the gusset on and stitch that on, same way. All right, just like that. So we have that all nice and trimmed. Just going to flip this over. And the lining's already there, so all we have to do is go ahead and clip it. And there we have our lining done. Isn't that cool the way that comes together? Love it. All right, so we're going to take some 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch double-sided tape, and we're going to do the same thing with the seams. We're going to open them up, and we're going to put this tape right along the top edge . the way around. Just like the main part of the bag, we are going to remove the backing from this and use the Decoville as our guide as to where to fold it. I'm going to fold it right over the edge. Make sure it's all on here good. And then I'm just going to, right where that Decoville is, just bam. All right, there we go. So we can now put this together. So when I am wearing the bag, you obviously want the pocket, well, I want the pocket to be on the outside. And I want the water bottle to be towards the front, towards my front. So I'm going to make sure that when I put the lining inside of this, I have that set up the right way. And the first thing I'm going to do is clip the sides. So I want to make sure the sides seams match. So we did that one. Let's go ahead and get this one. Now, if you want to put some more double-sided tape on this to hold this together as you sew, you can certainly do that. I choose not to at this point because I already have 2 layers. And I just don't really want to add a third, but you can. All right, so now that we have the sides clipped, we're going to go ahead and lay the rest of this flat and get it clipped. Now, if you're opening, you know, your main bag opening is a little bit wider or bigger than your lining, you can certainly just stitch it a little closer on the seams. It's going to look like it doesn't want to fit, but you see that side right there just fit together perfectly. And the reason why is because the gusset tries, or not the gusset, the divider kind of tries to pull it one way or the other. So and then another thing is, as you top stitch this, you know, it's really convenient to have a cylinder arm for this one. because it is a drop-in lining. By putting the lining section on the bed of the machine, it does help sometimes ease that lining in a little bit if it's a little bit bigger. Okay, so we're going to go over to the cylinder arm and we're going to top stitch this closed and we're done. So we're sitting here at the cylinder arm. I'm going to go ahead and start top stitching. We still need to put the zipper pull and the zipper end on. So go ahead and put your zipper pull on first. Need to burn my edges a little bit. They're starting to fray. Let's see if we can get this on without a jig. Now, if for some reason when you did your zipper placket, your teeth didn't match up exactly right, this is where you can cheat it a little bit. So if you have one section that maybe the teeth are a little forward on the placket than another, you can just adjust it by putting the teeth in differently here. Instead of matching them up, just put one in a little bit sooner than the other and it'll help it match up here at the end. Looks pretty darn good. So let's put the, I'm going to cut this down just a little bit. I like to clip the tape together while I'm doing this. So that way I don't have to worry about it coming apart. Burn the edge here. And then put our little screw in. All right, now we are done. Stick that in. get our crossbody strap. Clip it on. All right, let's have a look. Okay, the Lil Leah skinny, regular sized, skinny again, and mini. So we have lots of sizes of this bag. This is fantastic. This is, I think, one of my favorite size out of the 3 of them, because you can just, you go into, the grocery store, you're going to a fair, you're going to wherever it may be. This is such an easy carry. And I like the slimmer because I feel like it sits on your body a little bit better, as far as this one compared to the mini. But the mini is great too if you don't have this great big huge water bottle. I mean, this is a kind of a big one compared to the standard Aquafina or Dasante bottle. Of course, you don't have to carry a water bottle. We talked about gym clothes, a umbrella. I mean, it's endless. The possibilities are just endless. I even had somebody turn this into a camera case and use this for their lens, used foam instead of Decovil. Put their lens here, their camera here. It worked out fantastic. So I hope you enjoyed the tutorial, the Lil Leah. Go ahead and get a copy today. I'll link it below. And as always, if you have any questions, you know where to find me, Chris@simplyclassic.net. And until next time, happy sewing.